Let's see who accepts it. YouTube has accepted it. Twitch has accepted it. Facebook has accepted it. You ready to start your show?
Yeah, could we just do some silence?
Sure. So when you hit the clapper, I'll start the timer, okay?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Hello, Think Twice Radio, and welcome to another episode of the Metachewy Livestream. I'm Metachewy. Welcome to today's show. In today's show, I have covered a couple different topics. So we're going to provide a briefing or an update on the New York State Department of Transportation Kensington Expressway project and the upcoming lawsuit. We'll also talk a little bit about the election, which now we've had a week to reflect. So I'm going to just present some of my thoughts on kind of big takeaways from the outcome of that event, and maybe some analysis of what's happening in our current political system. And then I'll provide a brief interlude. This upcoming Saturday is Taro Sugimoto's 70th birthday. So I'll be talking a little bit about that, and also presenting my first folk or EP recording. So I'm actually going to sing a song I've been working on called "We Want Taro." So I'm producing a song, but this will be kind of a folk acoustic take of it, and then also provide a little bit of analysis of the current crypto and Bitcoin market. So today, as I record this, we hit a new all-time high for the Bitcoin price of $90,000 US dollars for one Bitcoin. So I'll be providing a little analysis of what exactly I think is driving that. Let's get started with today's show. So I want to start at the top with an update on the restoration of Humboldt Parkway, right? So the East Side Parkways Coalition and their lawsuits against the New York State Department of Transportation. So next Monday is a court case. So to recap for those that maybe didn't listen to my full episode a couple weeks ago about the lawsuits, but essentially last month a judge heard around 4 lawsuits, all related to the Kensington Expressway project. And after that hearing, he asked both the state and the East Side Parkways Coalition community groups to provide their best 15 pages of law. And so both sides have submitted a 15-page memorandum of law of their best law. And the judge has listened to that, and we'll have hearings, and we'll see. I think it's likely that he'll offer an actual opinion on the court case. That's Monday. So Monday the 18th, bright and early, there will be a hearing, and that judge he's done a deep dive on everything from the environmental impact statement lawsuit to the actual historical one to the climate case. And now with these 15 pages, he should, and I think it's likely that we'll see him make a ruling on the actual environmental impact statement. So the judge had issued a temporary restraining order until these cases were heard. So actual construction of the Kensington has been stopped until there's a rendering heard. So if I had to guess now, I would, and obviously I'm biased, I'm with the East Side Parkways Coalition, but just based on the courtroom and the judge and some of the questions, it does seem like he is leaning towards the coalition side. So it wouldn't surprise me if he rendered a decision that the state needs to conduct a full environmental impact statement on the Kensington Expressway project. And of course, the state will appeal that decision if that is what what happens. It won't be over from there, but definitely got good vibes in the courtroom that the judge was leaning towards requiring a full environmental impact statement. And I think one of the most pointing moment for me was at one point he asked the New York State Department of Transportation, he brought up the Peace Bridge case, where the judge ruled there back in the 90s that this is one of the largest infrastructure projects in the region's history. Why wouldn't it require an EIS? And I don't think the New York State lawyer could provide a good reason of why there was no EIS. I think there's over 40 mitigation measures in the EIS report. And 40 requirements, an investment of over $1 billion in 5 years of construction, but no further investigation is required. So we'll see that. So that's Monday, November 18th in the downtown Buffalo, I believe in the Erie County Court system or Erie County Court building, will be the next hearing. And I think this should be the final one, at least at this level. I'm sure the decision will be appealed from the state side. And we'll see if the coalition does lose, because it's also another possible outcome of Monday's trial is that he rules that that the state did foul and that they need an EIS at that point. That would definitely be the doom and gloom scenario for the coalition, because at that point the construction would start. And once the trains left the station, it's kind of hard to claw that back. So we'll see. So that's a brief that's a brief summary on the East Side Parkways Coalition. And I might touch a little deeper later on the show of one of the appendixes, but while we're so early in it, while I still have my voice, because I've learned that when it's these shows where I talk for 60 minutes, I quite frequently will either have my voice strained or whatever towards the end or afterwards the show. I definitely drink a lot of water and have to hydrate. But I did want to, obviously I'm wearing the Buffalo Sabres jersey today, which is different. That is to commemorate Taro Tsujimoto's 70th birthday, which is this Saturday. So for those that may not know, Taro Tsujimoto was the first Japanese ice hockey player drafted to the National Hockey League. So he was drafted with the 183rd pick in the 1974 NHL amateur draft from the Tokyo Katanas. And the only catch was he didn't exist. So kind of an inside joke, the Sabres general manager and scouts, they were really frustrated with the NHL's draft process and how long and tedious it was, and kind of to play a joke on the commissioner, they drafted a player that didn't exist. So they drafted a fake player as an inside joke, and they actually kept the ruse going for a couple of years. Fans and players and the media would ask during training camp, "Where's Taro?" They would set him up with a stall with his jersey in it. I think he had a number 13. And they kept it going for a while, but eventually they did find out, and now the draft pick is an invalid claim in the official record books. But Taro Tsujimoto has kind of taken a folkloric, he's a kind of a hero in Buffalo Sabres folklore and local folklore. So he, so actually at one point, Sabres fans, they would chant, "We want Taro, we want Taro," when games at the old Memorial Auditorium would turn into blowouts. And also there's a group called the Phantom Sign Makers. So a group of fans that would go to every game with banners that would say "Taro says," and then each game they'd have a different thing that Taro would say. So kind of punny, witty one-liner that they would write, and they'd hang it over at the highest level of the auditorium with saying. So say that's a little bit of the brief history. I did record a longer segment on the full history of Taro Tsujimoto, so I encourage you, if you're interested, especially in the celebration of his 70th birthday, which is coming up on Saturday, to maybe go watch that. But I am working on a more produced song. I actually was at the Sabres game on Monday against the Canadians, and I recorded some clips for a music video. So I'm currently in the process of producing, laying down a track, but I did want to kind of sing at least kind of a folklore or a more stripped down acoustic version of that. So I'm going to sing that now while I still have my voice 10 minutes into the show. So give me a little bit time here to transition, but so I'm going to start kind of getting transitioning to the different camera. So Here we go. Let's switch over to Vin 2. Hello, world. And yeah, I guess this song for me, the We Want Taro, I think there's a quote that goes something like, people don't have ideas, ideas have people. I don't know if that makes sense, but it does to me. I think, yeah, this song or this idea for a song is something I've had for a while. So it's yeah, I think it started with just when I don't know how it came up to, but I learned about the Phantom Sign Makers. So I learned about first the this group of fans called the Phantom Sign Makers, and that kind of gave me the idea to write a song about the Phantom Sign Makers, this group of fans. I think when I heard that Sabres fans at the Memorial Auditorium would chant, "We want Taro, we want Taro," when the game would turn to blow up, that like instantly was like, oh, that's a chorus right there, "We want Taro," and it kind of built for there. So yeah, the song I've it's had me for a while, and I think I've got to the point now where I have a framework of a song, and I think I'm almost like aiming to be a one-hit wonder. Like I want this song to be my only song, but I think there's room to play it 1,000 different ways. So even as I've been producing the song, I've been deeply studying Japanese music, right? So I want to make this song about Taro Sugimoto, and I want to make it as authentic as possible, or incorporate, inspiration from Japanese music. So I think it's, ja Kuro. So even, one of the things I've been learning about Japanese music is they have this concept called flexible and inflexible time. So I think, right, Western musician we're used to, our Western ears are used to hearing kind of a count of 1, 2, 3, 4. So something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So very consistent beat, right? That's something, a lot of Western music, most of it is in 4/4 time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. In Japanese music is similar, right? They have strict time, I think is the term they call it. They have a Japanese word, but they call it strict time and flexible time. So strict time, they very much have that 1, 2, that metronomic consistent beat, but something they also have is flexible time, where they might go something like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So something like that. And that's just my understanding. But essentially, and they have these two instruments. They have the otsunemi and the katsuzemi, which are kind of two drums. So you have two people playing the drums, and essentially either one of those people can just stop. They can hold three. My understanding can be as indefinite or as indefinite as possible. And I think that kind of maybe inspired me to incorporate that. I think as I sing it, maybe I might flex into that, but yeah, there's a little bit of Japanese history, but and also Japanese music, they have the fourth. So a fourth is big for them. So Western music we deal with fifths. So something like a root note here, and the fifth, which would be here. So 1, 5. 1, 5, but Japanese music, they have this concept. They really have high notes. They do 4, so they do something like this: 1, 4. So I'm gonna try to. So that's a little bit of Japanese music theory. But yeah, why don't I stop talking and start singing? So here's my first live performance, full performance of We Want Taro. So here I go. Chawe chidyo chem chero. Chawe chidyo chem chero. Chawe chidyo chem chero. Chawe chirio chem chero. Chawe chirio chem chero. Chawe chirio chem chero. The prophecy foretold of a man who'd come from Tokyo. He'd go connect the west to the east, and soon he'd bring world peace. But first he'd bring the silver dream to the blue and the gold. And they called him Taro, Taro Sujimoto, Taro Sujimoto. Heart of Gordy, stride of ore, slinkier spine than the Dominator, tougher than a rented mule, Super Mario, the rival for the Great One of Brantford, Ontario. They called him Taro, Taro Sujimoto, Taro Sujimoto. With the commissioner on the phone, he said, "Do we have a pick from Buffalo?" And the Sabres punched their ticket for Taro. 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 T-A-R-O. T-S-U-J-I-M-O-T-O. T-A-R-O. T-S-U-J-I-M-O-T-O. Taro. Taro Sujimoto. Taro. Taro Sujimoto. Taro. T-S-U-J-I-M-O-T-O. But Taro was training in the Himalayas, and he took his connecting flight to Buffalo. He took a pit stop in Kilimanjaro. He vanished to the clustering clouds of Kilimanjaro. Taro tragically slipped in Kilimanjaro. Taro tragically slipped in Kilimanjaro. Taro tragically slipped in Kilimanjaro. And now phantoms haunt the yard. We want Taro. Phantoms haunt the yard. We want Taro. Auditorium oranges roll. We want taro. 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 And Taro says to slow your march down. And Taro says that blue cheese is better than ranch. And Taro says that my innocence was taken by Dick Cheney. And Taro says there were no WMDs. And Taro says that DNC don't care about me. And Taro says my innocence was taken by Dick Cheney. And Taro says there were no WMD. And Taro says Slava Ukrainia. And Taro says Rio Ruvira. And Taro says Injana Durir Kubla Khan. And Taro says Rio Ruvira. Taro says Rio Ruvira. And we want Taro. 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 So thank you. I don't know if there's anyone cheering out there, but that's yeah, that's my first full public performance of We Want Taro. So yeah, I'll be producing and maybe laying out a more, I guess I'm going to call it my pop song, but hopefully I'll be releasing that soon. But that's at least the framework for yeah, a song called We Want Taro. So thanks for listening, and yeah, I'm sure I'll be singing that more and hopefully better and improving as I go along. So, yeah. So let me wanted to sing that too while I had my voice still. Let me just take the Sabres jersey off then. Yes, we have a comment from Thomas. So Taro played for 2 teams named after swords. So that is true. So Taro was drafted from the Tokyo Katanas, which means sword in Japanese. So as part of the creation of Taro, so it actually, they kind of spur of the moment, they said, oh, we should do something to mess with the commissioner. And they said, oh, we should draft a player that doesn't exist. So there's a guy, one of the Sabres scouts, he passed the Sugimoto farm and garden shop, which is, I think on Alma, somewhere in Alma, so that was where the inspiration for Sugimoto came from. So they actually then called, I think it was Joshua Sugimoto, who was the owner of, they actually called Sugimoto Garden and said, what's a common Japanese boy's name? And they replied, oh, Taro. They said, okay, well, how do you say sword in Japanese? And he said katana. So yeah, then that was how they came up with kind of filling in the color of this fake player of Taro Sugimoto from the Tokyo Katanas. I think he was like a 5'10", 165 center iceman. And yeah, I don't know if he played anywhere else, but that was at least his draft profile. So yeah, that's Taro. And yeah, like I had mentioned earlier, if you missed it, Saturday is actually Taro Sugimoto's 70th birthday, which I don't know if anyone is aware of that. I know when I was recording my music video on Monday by the Sabres game, a security guard from Key Bank Center came out and spoke with me, which I'm upset that I was filming my music video and I had the camera like here with myself and then a shot over here, and he kind of approached me over here. So I'm talking to the security guard and I don't have it on camera. That would have been a great moment for my music video, but yeah, I don't know if anyone in the Sabres organization is even aware that it's his birthday on Saturday. And I know the myth of Taro Sugimoto, it was definitely a bigger thing. I think it seems like in the auditorium, right? And I think just as time's gone by, maybe some of the folklore, maybe some of the legend of Taro has faded away a little bit. Especially right in the auditorium, it was less corporate, right? So there was actual space where they could hang their banner, whereas now it's kind of all corporate and advertisements. But I'm hoping to maybe keep the Taro Sugimoto legend, maybe give it new life as he turns 70 years old now. Okay, so let's move on. Let's see, about halfway through. So so far I've talked about the Kensington Expressway update. So Monday is their lawsuit. Yeah, Saturday is Taro's 70th birthday. That was my performance of a folk song. So I think in the back half, I want to maybe provide some analysis on one, the election, which happened last Tuesday, and then also a little bit on the crypto and Bitcoin markets, which are seeing their all-time high today. So I think first I'll start with last Tuesday's results. So I think as we're all aware now, or maybe you're not, I know I was trying to see how long I could go without knowing who the president-elect would be. So last Tuesday, in Tuesday's election, Donald Trump was elected president-elect of the United States. So I wanted to provide some analysis on maybe some of the, maybe some objective analysis, right, of that result. So I think the biggest thing for me obviously was that at this point, as the votes are still kind of trickling in with all the counting and whatnot, but it appears that, you know, not only did Trump win the Electoral College, but he won the popular vote. I think really the biggest, obviously, I think the biggest data point was it wasn't that Trump attracted new voters. He actually got less votes than he did when he lost. I think the biggest takeaway was just how fewer people turned out for Kamala Harris. So that was the biggest thing. Of you have really less turnout. It wasn't that Trump was turning out more people. It was literally that less people turned out for Harris. And I think, I mean, the question is, you know, why is that? I don't know if anyone really knows. I think, so that was kind of the big data point, I think, was the less turnout. And I think maybe I want to provide maybe my thoughts, and maybe right when we zoom out and we kind of think of history, I think that this moment in time will, it feels like it may be the death nail in the coffin of the Democratic establishment. So if we'll remember in 2016 when Trump ran for the first time as a Republican, right? I think there was the 2016 Republican primary, right? Where at that point, it seems like ancient history, but it wasn't that long ago, that like Jeb Bush was the kind of the anointed, he was going to be the GOP candidate, right? It was at that point pegged to be, it was going to be Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton was the most likely outcome. And I think when Trump in that Republican primary came out and he just said, I think he said something of the nature of the war in Afghanistan was a failure. It was like this audible gasp in the room, but it felt like that was the moment of the death of the Republican establishment. And this moment in time, right, it's not something that happens right away, but I think this election will be most remembered as kind of the death of the Democratic establishment. I think just with how few people turned out, I don't know. Right, it's too early to look ahead to 2028, but I think there's going to be some major reforms, and I think there needs to be some major reforms in the Democratic Party. And I think, right, it feels like this is maybe, I mean, Trump killed the Republican establishment, and now he's killing. Seems like he may have knocked out the Democrat establishment. I think, and you kind of saw this in Kamala's campaign too, is right. And I think broader what's going on here is we are seeing some sort of we're seeing a political realignment. I think I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, but I think that's what we're slowly happening. I think when Trump did essentially take over the Republican Party, and as I mentioned, 2016, right, at that point, Jeb Bush was the anointed one, right? He was the one that was going to carry on the legacy of the Democrat establishment. I mean, he, in that primary, was talking about, you know, the war on terror still and whatnot. And I think what happened, and I think what's happening, is when Trump overtook the Republican establishment and made it really, right at this point, it's the party of Trump. You had all these kind of homeless or, right? You left Republican establishment figures like a Jeb Bush, like a George Bush, like a Dick Cheney. You had all these neocon war hawks that really didn't have a home, right? They're not really welcomed in the Republican Party of Trump. And I think what you saw slowly over the campaign was that these traditional Republicans, I don't know what to call them, establishment Republicans, are slowly coming over to the Democratic Party. So I think you even saw Kamala, right? She was making this she was campaigning for like moderate conservatives. I think she'd call them moderate conservatives, but you saw, I think it was, you know, Liz Cheney endorsing them. I think at one point, one of, not Jenna Bush, but the other Bush twin. So George W. Bush's daughter came out and endorsed Kamala, and you saw the kind of the mainstream media like hail it up like, oh, look at this great endorsement, which was kind of like wild, because I think, right, I don't know if the legacy media really understands how unpopular the war on terror was. And I think, you know, courting Dick Cheney's daughter or Dick Cheney as like is, you know, an endorsement is not something I would think you would be proud of. But I think what you're slowly seeing is kind of, right, I think if right, if you think of, I don't know, the Republican establishment, you have the left and you have the right, This is how we traditionally think of the political parties. So on the left, you have the Democratic Party, and on the right, you have the Republican Party traditionally, right? In each of those parties, to the left, right, the left is really, and the Democrats are composed of like the far left and the moderate left, which is kind of the establishment, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden types. And then on the right, you have the same thing. You have the radical right, or I think they call them the alt-right, or the right establishment. So the kind of the Dick Cheneys, George Bushes. And that's kind of like how we think of it, as like a spectrum from, you know, from left to right. Right. I think what's slowly happening is kind of this left and right is kind of doing this thing where it's inverting. So you're kind of seeing it almost become like a circle of you're having this now, right? So you have the left and the right, you have the far left and the far right, and then you have kind of the moderate in the middle. And I think kind of, I mean, going back to 16, whether it was Jeb Bush, Hillary Clinton, you kind of had in the middle, right? The Washington establishment is kind of the same, right? I think what you're slowly seeing is like our political moment is kind of doing something where it's like inverting like this. So now you're having the far left and the far right kind of come together as more of a working class party. And then kind of the two establishment parts of the party are coming together to kind of form this new party. So it feels very much to me like we are in the midst of this moment where the Democratic Party is slowly becoming like the establishment party. So I think it's easier to think of it as like a top down, whereas like the Democratic Party is more becoming like the party of the top. So I think this was also kind of, the Republicans, right? I think are becoming more of the working class party. And obviously that doesn't happen overnight. It hasn't fully happened yet, but it feels very much like we are in this moment where I think that's happening. If you're actually having, which is crazy because I think growing up, right, the Republican Party was traditionally the party of war, the party of war hawks, and even going back early, the Democrats, right, has this legacy of the original Kennedy Democrats, which peace, working class, and I think why I say this was kind of an election where it was kind of the death of the Democratic establishment is what literally Kamala was the anointed candidate of the Democratic establishment, right? They failed to have an open primary. They didn't have any other candidates because Joe Biden was going to be the candidate. And then Joe Biden got up, had a terrible debate performance. And, he resigned, but there's some whispers that he may have been pressure to step aside from inside the Democratic Party, and then all of a sudden it was like overnight, right? Joe Biden resigned, and then they should have had some sort of election at their actual convention, but Kamala quickly gained support within the party, and before you knew it, she was the candidate. And I think, I don't know if this election result, right, just shows, I think it was a complete complete rejection of the establishment. And obviously I don't think perfect was on the election but I think it was just kind of really a signal. It really feels like a kind of a working class kind of just a kind of a working class kind of revolt against the establishment. I think and I hope we'll see something much different in the Democratic Party in 2028, right? It's, if you think even back to 2008, Obama was hope and change, and he kind of sideswiped Hillary. Hillary was supposed to be the anointed one, but I think it's very clear the electorate wants hope and they want change. And at this point, Trump is change. I mean, good or bad change. He is different, right? Which I think is some of the draw. Right. They keep, even the whole Bernie thing, I think back in 16 and 20, they kind of, the Democratic establishment or the establishment did not allow Bernie and kind of manipulated the rules of the game to make sure he didn't get the nominee. And I think it just, after a while, people kind of, it's very clear that, and even, back historically, right, the left and the right have always kind of been the same because, whether you call them the party elite to the establishment, really when you think of traditional, right, even if you go back to 16, if the Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton had been allowed to happen, like, yes, it's a Democrat and a Republican, but they both hold a worldview or a point of view which is acceptable to the powers that be in Washington. So it's kind of like Burger King or McDonald's, right? Do you want Burger King or McDonald's? Burger King or McDonald's? And you can make a whole industry over Burger King or McDonald's. But Burger King and McDonald's, they want you to pick one or the other. What they don't want is you to pick vegetables, right? Because if you pick vegetables, then you're not going to want either of those. And I think I saw some data too, or some reporting that most Americans are actually consider themselves either in the I don't care or independent bucket. And I think it was something like 40% of registered voters actually didn't even vote. So there's such an apathy, and and I feel like I'm also one of the many Americans that just don't feel like they fit. I'm like a politically homeless person. I don't really belong to either Republican or Democrat. I think most people at this point kind of view themselves as independent, but I think at a high level, what we're seeing is a realignment of American politics, American political parties. Now, I think another example of that was, I don't know if you call it a fiasco, but the whole, the Joe Rogan experience, I think, was a good example of just to illuminate kind of what's going on, right? So this I think also will be remembered as the podcast election. So I think this was the first time you actually saw presidential candidates go on long form podcasts. And one example, especially for me, right, I'm a white male in my mid-30s, so I fit a certain demographic, and I am a Joe Rogan fan, right? I'm a fan of Joe Rogan podcasts. I'm not a huge Joe Rogan bro, but I enjoy watching his clips. I respect him. I've listened to many hours of Joe Rogan. He has lots of interesting guests. I think an interesting moment there was, right, Joe Rogan has a 3-hour long podcast. That's his format. That's his deal. He does long form conversations, and he had Donald Trump on his podcast. So Donald Trump went on and had a 3-hour talk with Joe Rogan, and it was really, I didn't watch the full thing, but these long form podcasts are extremely powerful in that, right, you get a sense of someone, even you, if you're listening to my hour-long stream, just, I am saying things, right? But just over the course of listening to me for an hour, you kind of get you get a sense of who I am, maybe as a person, or some of my attitudes, even though might not be explicitly saying them. But it would be very easy for someone to take a clip, a 5-second, 10-second clip of something I say in this podcast, which even me earlier talking about, left-wing, right-wing politics, it would be very easy for someone to take a 10-second, 15-second clip of this and spin it into some other narrative. But with a long form, it's very powerful in that not only do you get to get deeper dives into any sort of kind of mainstream 2-minute segment on a topic, so you can actually learn more, but also you just get a sense of someone. And I think Joe Rogan's a great example of, he's recorded so much content, right? There's thousands and thousands of hours of him talking to a microphone that even if, right, it is a loyal listener, even if someone did take a 2-second clip of something crazy he said, I've just put in so many hours listening to Joe Rogan that I know Joe Rogan. It doesn't matter what you tell me. I've listened to hundreds of hours of him. I think, a good example was, right, Donald Trump came on Joe Rogan's podcast, and Joe Rogan also invited Kamala Harris on his podcast, and Kamala, who knows the full story, but Kamala Harris did not appear on Joe Rogan's podcast. Joe Rogan, he had tweeted and said that he invited Kamala on his show, open invitation. If she was in Texas, tell him a time, he'd stop in the studio. And he said that Kamala Harris's team kind of communicated that they were willing to do an hour-long show, but he would have to come to her. Ultimately she didn't end up being on the show, which I think, Trump being on, but I think also for a lot of listeners, Kamala not coming on was just as big as Trump going on. So I think, especially, but then Kamala didn't have time to do a 3-hour Joe Rogan show, but Kamala did have time to go on SNL or Saturday Night Live, and she did go on Call Her Daddy, which is kind of like, from my understanding, like Joe Rogan but for women, which I think even leading up into the election, it was very clear that Kamala was struggling with men particularly, and I think she really blew in opportunity to go on Joe Rogan's show and talk to men, right? There is, I think, 30 million subscribers, and are mostly men listening to Joe Rogan. So that was an opportunity for her to go on and pitch her case and make a case to all these men that don't that maybe were on the fence about her. And her not going on, I think, said just as much as Donald Trump going on it, that right. And I think even you saw her struggle too with just being able to respond to off the cuff questions. And I think it was just showed the mindset of not just Kamala, but I think the DNC. And I even saw some people commenting or tweet of like, "Oh, Joe Rogan, doesn't even have a college degree. He's just talking to a microphone on the internet." That was like such a dismissive way of like what Joe Rogan does. There's a reason that there's an army of people with PhDs and none of them have 30 million subscribers, right? So I think it's completely dismissive, and I think I think that kind of case, because even when Kamala went on SNL, it's like, oh, you think it's 1984 still? Like, you think Saturday Night Live is culturally relevant, whereas something like Call Her Daddy or Joe Rogan has way more eyeballs and attention than something like Saturday Night Live. And it just again, kind of hammered home just maybe the general consensus that the Democratic establishment and the Washington establishment is just out of touch with general people. And I think you just saw her running a campaign where, yeah, she thought it was 1984, and she thought that going on a Saturday Night Live and doing a 2-minute joking scene would like get people to vote her. It's like voters are much smarter than I think. I don't think, right? Especially, yeah, people would have loved to see a 3-hour Kamala Harris unscripted interview. It would have been really. I know as a voter, I would have listened to it because I think there's a lot you can learn. I think it's just kind of the power of. I mean, yes, in the backdrop of you have the realignment of the parties, and I have a comment here from Thomas who says left wing, right wing, same bird, and that's exactly the point of. For so long, Americans have been told, do you want McDonald's or do you want Burger King? Do you want the Republican Party or do you want the Democratic Party? And I think most Americans are waking up and it's like, no, we don't want McDonald's or Burger King. We don't want Democrats or Republicans. We want outside the box. We want hope and change. We want something different. And I think while you have kind of what I'll have is this kind of the linear left to right spectrum to now this kind of inversion of top and bottom, of working class on the bottom versus elites and mainstream, which is everything. It's even media. I think the long form podcast is just an example too of you're slowly seeing a loosening of the grasp of, right, even if you go back, right, it used to be 247, channel 2, channel 4, channel 7. It was very easy for, the powers that be to control narratives, right? When you have three channels, they can all basically, right, there was a narrative, and I think the internet is just kind of disrupting this of now, right, it's a double-edged sword. It's positive, negative of now we have access to so much information that we can get such good information, but there's also a glut of bad information or misinformation and disinformation. I think those terms are thrown around kind of loosely, but at this, right, back in the day when there was channel 247, there was a truth, right? There was the news, which was 247, and those three channels more or less reported a narrative version, which was one point of view of reality, when in reality is much more complex. And I think what you're seeing is social media, whether it be Twitter, whether you see it be TikTok, you're just seeing a rapidly evolving media landscape where it's just changing. And I don't know. I just think, I think this may be the last election where even the presidential debate felt very antiquated. I don't know if that's a term for it, but it just felt like really we're going to have, and I think I even saw some reporting that there's something in the party contracts of presidential debates are only allowed to be on channel 247 or ABC, Fox, CNN, which is like, oh, that's another way that that they control the election is, right. They only, even if Donald Trump and Kamala Harris agreed to do a debate on Joe Rogan, they technically couldn't because it's in the contracts that they're not allowed to. So it's, I think it's just like, oh, it's just kind of slowly unraveling, right? The old world, pre-internet, now this internet's just changing. Where now people don't trust Walter Cronkite. There is no Walter Cronkite. There's no one person. I don't know if that's his name, but there's no one anchor that gives the truth out to the masses. It's really everybody, depending on their demographics, their interests, has different. There's many different expert authorities. I mean, Joe Rogan, and to me too, is just, he's right. I don't just listen to Joe Rogan, but he's someone I listen to and respect his opinion. And there's many people on the internet and talking heads, you'll say that I listen to, but he's just one of them. But I definitely trust Joe Rogan more than, I don't know, an anchor on CNN or an anchor on Fox News or an anchor on CNN. Because I think there's something powerful to the unscripted nature of media. I think that's something that's also kind of the legacy media is good at like presenting. I mean, all their anchors, they look like they're talking to you, right, in the camera, but what they're doing is they're really just reading a teleprompter and looking in the camera like they're talking to you. Whereas like here, I'm just riffing. which is different. So I think, yeah, it's in summary, this feels like the election of the death of the Democratic establishment, or I think, who knows? I mean, I don't know. I think this has to be the final. I don't know if the Democrats can continue to just kind of kneecap popular candidates, whether that's Bernie Sanders, whether that's, who knows, we don't even know who Democratic voters would have picked to be their nominee if they had an open primary. But I think it's definitely clear that the Democratic establishment tries to pick and really tries to steer the party towards their preferred candidates, where I think Bernie was super popular. I think Bernie Sanders would have beat Trump probably this election, probably 2020, 2016, but we'll never know because, it was kind of steered or picked for us. And I think, I don't know, we'll see. It'll be interesting. I think, it's just interesting to kind of see it's changing, because I think you have this, especially for me, someone that's younger, it just seems obvious, but I think you do have, it was the whole SNL bit of, Kamala thinks it's 1984 still and still thinks that Saturday Night Live is like culturally relevant, and it hasn't been. I think the internet's just changing. It's just another example of just, the world's changing, and right. I think it's adopt or die, or those who don't, you got to evolve, and I we'll see. We'll see how. We'll see what happens, and I think 2028 will be interesting, because 2024 was interesting. So much can happen between then. But we'll see. So that's a little bit of my political analysis. So one, I think it's the biggest takeaway was that just way less people turned out for Kamala. So it wasn't necessarily Trump turning people out or converting new voters. It was more just Trump keeping his same kind of base and voting base, and Democrats or people just not turning out for Kamala was kind of the big takeaway. Two, I think this is like the long form. I think this is the podcast. This was the podcast election. So I think when JFK, right when he did his first TV debate, that was like the TV election, where this feels like, the podcast internet. And I have a comment here of K-pop is the future. And we need a new second party to emerge. And I think, I don't know if it's K-pop. I think, right, there's all these new internet figures and influencers, I think is what the Zoomers call them. But you're having this new, you're seeing an environment where someone like Joe Rogan has more power than even the vice president, right? He can dictate to the vice president when and where she'll come on his show, because in truth, Joe Rogan doesn't need Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris needed access to Joe Rogan's 30 million subscribers more. So you're seeing this kind of podcast where you're seeing, and even the Call Her Daddy, right? Kamala went on Call Her Daddy, which is a female version. And even Trump made the rounds on many long form podcasts. So I think it's the podcast election. And then two, I think you are seeing this, the death of the Democratic establishment and kind of the inverting of, the left and right spectrum. And you're seeing something where kind of the two center poles are coming together in the Democratic Party, and then the two extremes, I think, are slowly coming together to form kind of a working class party. Because I think when you think of the Republican Party, at some point it will have to be after Trump. I think it will be kind of a more working class party. I have a comment here that Kamala, a super weak candidate to pick. And I think, I think that's true. I mean, Kamala ran in 2020. She didn't gain any traction then. And, right. And for me as a voter, it was kind of, felt like gaslighting to say that, Trump is a threat to democracy, but so in order to save democracy, we must vote for the candidate who didn't participate in a primary because she was installed by the DNC elites. So it feels, even then, even the message of, the economy is great, Bidenomics, was kind of a flawed messaging before. And even before that, I think people, it was just, and I think, I have a comment here. They're looking for scapegoats now too. And I think that's right. I think I saw a comment that Nancy Pelosi was saying that Joe Biden is a consequential president. That sounded like she was hinting that Theodore Roosevelt should be removed and Joe Biden. And it's just like, what planet are you people on that you think Joe Biden is like above a Theodore Roosevelt? But I don't know. I think that's the big threat, and I think that's right. The Democratic establishment was also right. They were, while they should have been pandering and was it? I don't know, politicianing, but they should have been marketing to like their base, right? The left progressive base. But instead of doing that, they were kind of like turning towards the center and like aiming at like the Dick Cheney moderate Republicans, which is like, those people don't exist. There is no like Jeb Bush, Dick Cheney Republican, moderate Republicans that are on the fence. Like that's not a demographic. In Washington, that might be a thing, but like in America, there's that whole, George Bush, neocon, Dick Cheney Republican is like not a real thing. So I think the Democrats, I hope what they learned from this election is that they need to lean into like kind of, I don't want to say the Bernie Sanders, but like they need to lean into being a party for the working class, being, they need to lean into their progressive base and focus on meeting their needs. Even they didn't give a voice to any of the, whether it was no trans speakers at their convention, there was no Free Palestine speakers at their convention. They really provide a very muted, mundane version of the Democratic Party, which is kind of this, right? They're trying to make this tent where it's Democrat establishment. They're trying to like welcome in the Republican establishment, make like this party. It's like, there's a reason that Trump was able to vanquish the Republican establishment. It's because those people aren't popular. Their policy positions are not popular. People don't want endless wars in the Middle East. They want, it's just, so I have a comment here that, they're looking for blame. And I don't know if Nancy Pelosi is going to do soul searching. It seems like they do. They're so out of touch that they don't understand why their policies aren't popular. And I have another comment, right? You cannot lure MAGA away from MAGA, and they are hoping that it is possible. They need a populist like Bernie. And I think that's true. I think you're not going to, the only thing they did this election was push Bernie people over to Trump, because Bernie people are very much populist, right? And if you keep saying, not this time, just save democracy, vote for our establishment candidate, at a certain point, those populist people, right, coming to my analogy of the people, you go far left that you go right? You go so left that you go right because, again, the Democratic establishment, they're not leaning into their base, right? They're trying to court the Dick Cheney Republicans. And at a certain point, the people that are populist just say, okay, I don't agree with this person, but at least they're a populist, right? At least they get that there's a problem. I might not agree with their solutions type of thing. It just seems like they're, very, very out of touch. So that's, we'll see what happens in 2028. But I do hope that, I think this is a moment that even if you did vote for Donald Trump or if you voted for Kamala, I really do hope that we can start to move together. So even if you were someone that voted for Donald Trump and voted for MAGA, I hope that you take this time to really listen out or reach out to people that maybe are really upset now with the results. And at the same time, people that are really upset, I hope you can at least find someone or talk to someone that is for Trump and try to understand their world of view. Because I think even Twitter was something, as I was on Twitter, it was really amazing to see, right? You had the mainstream media saying that this election's razor close. This is a razor close. Then on the far right Twitter, you had, projections that Donald Trump is going to destroy Kamala. And then on far left Twitter, you had people saying that, Kamala was going to smoke Trump. So it was just really I had no idea what was going to happen because you just had all these different narratives. I just hope that, I think that's the biggest thing, is that people on the far left don't understand people on the far right? People on the left think all people that vote for Trump are racists, are bigots, are Nazis. And then on the far right, people think, right, anyone that's for Kamala or for the left are communists. And I don't think, it just feels like, even I have friends, right? I have friends and colleagues on both ends of the spectrum. It's like, when you hear people talk on either side, they all kind of echo the same problems. It's just a matter of the solutions. And I don't think people, just hope that maybe we can use this moment to, reach out to someone that maybe thinks different than you and try to understand their point of view. Because I think no one's as extreme as they see. And I have a comment too that they need to go the way of the Whigs and bull moose parties and the political parties of yesteryear. I know I just bought a book about the 1912 election and the that was Theodore Roosevelt's third party election when he left the Republican Party and started the Bull Moose Party. And I think, I would love to see the Democratic Party become kind of a really progressive Bull Moose Party. And I think there is room, even with Trump winning. I mean, a lot of his policies, I just think, a political party that prioritizes the working class, like people are really starving for that type of working class message. I mean, I think most Americans are in agreement that we don't like endless foreign wars. We don't like Wall Street. We don't like the military industrial complex. And I even think Robert F. Kennedy, when he came over to Trump, and he's really going against big pharma and making our food healthy. And it's like, whoa, I think most Americans don't like big pharma and would like healthy food. I think there's lots of popular messages, and I don't know what party will get that, but I think there definitely is room for some sort of new bull moose party. So that's the end of my show, and thanks for tuning in. So until next time, happy birthday, Taro. It's your 70th birthday, and we want Taro. So until next time, okay, bye.